Thank you, Mr. President. My name is Philip Sublet out of Belinda, Mexico. And I'm just asking that, you're saying all these wonderful things, and it's really good to hear this. But whenever you say that we've got to get laws passed or the help to the people that we need, we chuckle about it having to go through Congress. Well, can you break those lines of bipartisanship and get these laws and this help that we need to us, the people?
Well, first of all, I think it's very important to understand that since I came into office, I have said to my Republican friends in Congress, I want to work with you. I've had them over to the White House more than they were over in the White House during the Bush administration. That's true. We have consulted with them extensively. Now, there have been, on two big issues, some very fundamental disagreements with the Republican Party. And I don't doubt their sincerity. They just have a different view. One is on the stimulus package, on the Recovery Act. There were people who said we should not have government spend that much, especially when we're inheriting a $1.3 trillion deficit from the previous administration. And we've already spent money on the TARP program and shoring up the banks, et cetera. We shouldn't do this. There were some people who made that argument. Now, I will tell you that every serious Democratic and Republican, conservative and liberal economist that I spoke to believed very strongly that we needed a recovery package, because what was happening was consumers, they had pulled back. People weren't shopping as much because they were worried about the state of the economy and their debts had gotten too high. Businesses were pulling back. And so what you had was a crisis in demand where if everybody pulls back at the same time, nobody's going shopping. If nobody's going shopping, then this young lady with her store, she doesn't have money. She may have to lay off a worker, which means that worker's not spending less, which means they're not buying groceries, and now somebody else's store shuts down. You start getting into a vicious cycle where everybody's pulling back all at the same time. In that circumstance, the only person or the only entity that can fill the gap is the government. And so that's why we passed the Recovery Act. It's not because we're not worried about deficits. It's because if we didn't do anything, this economy could have really gone into a tailspin. But I make that point only to say there's some Republicans who just philosophically were opposed to the idea of this recovery package. I have to say they weren't as worried when the previous administration was running up and doubling our national debt, but having said that, it's entirely legitimate that's part of what our democracy is about, to disagree with us on this. They also disagreed on our budget because they don't believe that we should, for example, reform our health care system in a way that includes more people. They think that the free market can solve the problem. Now, I'm a strong believer in the free market, but I think that when it comes to health care, the free market only takes you so far. If your child is sick and you don't have health insurance, in a country this wealthy, we should be able to make sure that your child is cared for. So, and I actually think that long term we'll spend less money when we do that. Because other countries like France and Japan and a whole host of other countries, they spend less a percentage of their GDP on health care than we do. We spend more per capita than any nation on earth, but we still have 45 million people uninsured. And in some cases, we've got worse outcomes. We've got higher infant mortality rates. We've got higher rates of some deadly diseases. That doesn't make sense. But, again, there's a philosophical difference. Having said all that, on this credit card bill, when it passed in the House, we actually got 100 Republican votes. When On our children's health insurance bill, we got some Republican votes. So the media likes to focus on where we disagree. They don't tend to focus on the areas where we are actually working together. And I think that we'll see more and more agreement over time as the Republican Party starts to realize that the American people want results right now. They don't want bickering. And when they realize that, they'll have an open, outstretched hand from me. All right? Okay.